Well, hello there, and welcome back to the Curious Coaches Lemonade Stand with Dr. Gina, and today a special guest. So I want to welcome you back if you're coming back, and if this is your first time stopping by, glad to have you with us. This is where we sip, squeeze, we savor with style. So this is our little community virtual spot. Think of it as that local lemonade stand that you love to drop by in your neighborhood when you just need a little something something to quench your thirst. And today we are here with Miss Carrie Oswald, and we are going to get into some very interesting conversation because Carrie is definitely the woman who can pull together all of the strings of what we do here on the lemonade stand. And I think, ironically, perhaps, explain to you better than even I can why this concept really resonates for me because she's such a like minded spirit and soul. And I think so much of what we have in common is what is in common with all of us that are in this space here together. So, welcome in. And
Oh,
Carrie, I want to just hand over to you. Welcome to our space. And if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
sure. Well, first of all, Gina, thank you for having me on your podcast. I think that this is probably the first time that I've been offered an opportunity to be on a podcast that has um, married a bunch of different parts of me, and that's I know the topic that we're trying to sort of cover here today. And having those two worlds, or three worlds, or four worlds collide can be a really, really intimidating thing. And I want to try to be as authentic as I can in describing who I am. So, for your listeners, I am Carrie Oswald. My pronouns are she, her. I am a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, or at least I was a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant and have been for a number of years until our markets have really changed on the corporate side. And that led me to a few different decisions to diversify what it is that I do in my offering. I came out of a recruiting sector. I've been a recruiter for a number of years in every type of recruiting, including executive search and consultative search and things like that, which were part of what led me to a career in DEI. All the while doing this job, I also have a love for tarot and had a love for tarot for a number of years. But I kept it very quiet because tarot wasn't something that you led with in your conversations. I mean, who among us in a corporate setting would say, "Oh, by the way, I'm having a Ten of Swords moment. Can you help me out?" It
Oh, I'm
just
ready to normalize that.
Right. Right. But it couldn't be normalized, right? I mean, Gina, it was something that you really didn't lead with. And especially if you were in a leadership capacity, it was frowned upon to have this controversial side gig. Right. And it was for me a side gig. It was something that I did on weekends. I read tarot for clients. And then I branched off into teaching tarot to clients and doing some tarot events and things like that. And it just kind of organically became something more than just my side gig. In and amongst the changes that were happening in the industry I was in, this was actually ramping itself up, which was interesting. And I thought,
Very.
wow, how can I do this at the same time as I'm doing this other thing and still be me? Hmm. Wasn't that easy, and it's still not that easy, but it's starting to actually take on a bit of a life of its own. Um, so part of the other part of me is that I'm also an athlete, which is, something we don't really talk about too much, especially since I'm a master's athlete. I am over 35 and I still sprint and I still do hurdles. And so there is a side gig of me that I really don't ever talk about unless you're in those circles. I don't know how to marry that in. Somewhere I will. but but it's also an authentic part of who I
For
am.
sure.
I also work in the not-for-profit sector. I develop youth programs for school boards around equity and allyship and anti-racism. So all of these things are happening all at the same time. But the one thing that's interesting to me is how much the tarot piece has kind of moved into a coaching thing for me. So
Yes.
I'm taking all of those opportunities to educate and to bring in leadership aspects and decision making into how to integrate it to someone's soul. How do you, as an authentic person, guide yourself to your own decision making through your own enlightenment? And when we talk about enlightenment, we're not talking about spiritual enlightenment as much as we're talking about alignment to who you are. And does what you do and the decisions that you make align with who you are? Sometimes people have real big questions about that. And I think that the way that I help them determine those answers is to read cards. So I always say cards can't tell your future. They're pieces of paper. They don't do anything. They just sit there. And so you don't go to a tarot reader to have your future told. And I think that's very important because it's such
That's
a
an important myth
misnomer.
to
It's such a
dispel.
misunderstanding for people. And it's one of the things that I am very passionate about. I want to make sure that people understand that there's a rich history around tarot that might have led people to understand that tarot is all about fortune telling. It really isn't, not in a modern sense. In a modern sense, it gives you another tool to help to determine whether or not you're on track. If you're reading with a good reader, they will help you to make decisions about whether or not you're on track or whether or not you've considered other options, or whether your situation is super complicated and you need diverging options. You need options that might help you to make decisions that weigh heavily to one side of your soul and other side of your soul that's kind of calling in a different direction. Does any of that make sense?
A lot of that makes sense. I mean, to me, all of it makes sense because there's so much it's so rich, how you've chosen to introduce yourself, and I will definitely underscore the authenticity. There's so much to you, Carrie, and I think you did a great job of bringing it all in, and I am sitting with the way that you've integrated understandings of coaching and tarot and how they align in terms of the outcomes that they're actually looking for. And even in some ways, the methodology, the idea that, you're not telling futures to me resonates and aligns with a coach not telling you what to do, not being directive. The cards aren't directive, neither is your coach. I feel like each one in its own way is doing a type of channeling, doing a type of being a vehicle perhaps for certain messages or shifts in perspective and reframing, and really giving the opportunity for your client in either case to make that final decision about which way they're going to go and what approach they're going to take.
Right. And I think that that's super important too. Just like in coaching, you would seek out the right coach for you, right? You're going to go on a journey that's going to lead you to finding the right person to help you to understand what it is that you're missing or what it is that you could be aligned better with, or how to be more self-determinant. It's important when you select your own tarot reader to make sure that that person aligns with who you are. I think that having a bad experience with one tarot reader leads people to think, well, this is what tarot is. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think it's
Same with
important.
coaching, I
Yeah,
find. Yeah.
it's important that this normalized idea of seeking out the right people to help you determine things from a spiritual perspective is just as equal to a professional perspective. And you can be both things. I'm hopeful that the example that you can be both things. Um, Part of what makes me a good tarot reader is the fact that I've spent so many years being on the other side of the desk and interviewing people and really asking good questions and determining that am I seeing this correctly? Am I seeing this from the perspective of my client? Am I seeing this from the perspective of my candidate? And all of those things have led to maybe an emotional intelligence that lends itself really well to tarot. And then tarot becomes the vehicle. Tarot becomes the thing that I use, the tool that I use to help you on that journey, rather than help you to move to an objective that's outside of yourself. Now I'm helping you because the objective is inside yourself.
Love that.
Does that make
Really
sense?
love that.
I always ask, does that make sense? Because sometimes when it rattles around in my head, it makes sense. So then not until I
It's
actually say it does it make sense.
it completely resonates, and it's very empowering, I find, because it's aware of acknowledging and, bolstering the agency of the client in front of you. Right? And that I love that you tie in emotional intelligence, and your experience as a recruiter, because when I think about being a successful recruiter, especially one that works in an inclusive way as you do, that completely dovetails with the concepts of being a great coach. Either way, it's about asking very powerful questions. It's about recognizing and calling out the shifts that you're seeing in front of you. All of this very much is in alignment with my understanding of what emotional intelligence is and how it operates.
Yeah, and it's such a vulnerable thing, Gina. I mean, when we start to, and you know this too from coaching, when you start to open someone up and everything comes flooding out, your job as a tarot reader, and just similarly with my job as a recruiter, your job as a coach, is to not just manage what's coming out, but to hopefully bring some balance and um some guidance back so that you're not getting lost in the emotion of it all. And let me tell you, tarot readings can be super emotional. Super emotional. Lots comes out in reading cards. You wouldn't think so. You would think maybe, you can only sort of scratch the surface with this, but come to it from such a vulnerable place that you can't help but have a vulnerable reaction. And it's my job, any tarot reader's job, to manage that reaction. I see something in the cards, and that what I see can actually be really, really sensitive and tricky and hard to watch, hard to understand, hard to hear. And so I think sometimes when we think about tarot readers, that they're a very youthful individual who may be just coming out of a brand new career, coming to this from a brand new perspective, having no life experience in this case really is a detriment. And I say that with all due respect. You can read tarot from whatever perspective you want to, but if you have no life experience, it's very difficult to give really good advice from the tarot, because so much comes through in those conversations that you could easily give the wrong advice, or you could give the wrong interpretation, or an interpretation that leads to um, a result that isn't authentic for that individual. I'm not saying I've gotten it right 1,000 times. I haven't gotten it right 1,000 times, but I can
That's what
tell
my
you,
curiosity was piqued there.
right?
Like, this sounds like you're speaking from experience, an
Yep.
experience of gaining the wisdom of having gone through some that didn't potentially turn out the way you'd hoped.
Stories, but all of them have led me to, I'm a different reader today than I was before. I've decided to really channel readings from the perspective of career because it's what I am, it's what I know. And so when I talk to tarot clients, I ask them, are you looking for a specific question to be answered, or do we want to just hear what the cards say? And sometimes all we need to know is what the cards say. That leads us to a conversation that may be the answer or the question around a very complicated situation. And we're trying to, again, find advice or find guidance. If I like this message, what if I don't like this message? What can I do if I don't like this message? Always
Great
a great
question.
question to ask.
Yes.
Um, I have had lots of situations where the question is a love question or relationship question that ends up becoming this huge life decision that would not have been answered if we had asked one question about a relationship. And so I like to leave myself open to have the client come to me and say, well, this is what I want to know. And then we see what happens after that. And usually what happens after that is a much bigger question, which with much more depth in terms of what the answer actually is. Sometimes
This
that's a good thing. Sometimes it's not a good thing.
yeah,
Sometimes an hour is not enough time.
the parallels with coaching are incredible, incredible, because this is precisely I went through this with a client yesterday, and, anytime I'm having a first session with a coaching client and kind of doing the, I'll call it the spiel for lack of a better word, where, I'm kind of interviewing them to find out their experience with coaching, what their understanding of and expectations of coaching are. One of the things I always kind of offer as a disclaimer is whatever you come in with, it's your agenda, you drive this conversation. And I'm going to tell you right now, at least 80% of the time, whatever you walk in the door and tell me we're going to talk about, that's not what we're going to end up talking about. And it's
Almost
often
always.
because that's like literally the door that you open, and then you recognize, wow, there's all these rooms. Where do we start? And you end up in a different part of the house than you thought you would be. You thought, okay, I just need to open this door. Nope. Maybe you need to go down the basement and figure out what happened underneath all of this. Because oftentimes, whatever they've brought in as their, agenda item for the day is more of a symptom. And we got to kind of fight. How do we get here? What are the root causes? And that digging, as you said, can open up all kinds of unexpected emotions and reactions and other doors. And oh my gosh, maybe we're at the wrong address.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
And you've
we've
gotta be
asked the
open and
wrong
fluid
question.
and agile to respond to that, whether you're a coach or a tarot reader, and I think especially when you're integrating the 2 of them.
Especially, when you're integrating, you're right. I mean, if you're bringing in elements of, well, why did okay, so let's talk about a client that, we ask the question, "Why did you come here?" And the first question that they ask is, "I don't know what to do, so help me figure out what to do." That's that's kind of a massive question. We need to determine what it is that's underneath that. So in tarot, we say, "What's underneath the deck?" Right? And so I would start there. I would start with the bottom of the deck. So I've shuffled the cards and now I've come up with the one card on the bottom of the deck being the strongest energy. And we start from what you don't know or what you won't acknowledge. And so I mean, I've attempted to become the master of my own tarot language, and oftentimes we'll speak to people who are very tarot fluent or they understand tarot quite a bit, and we will talk in tarot speak, and we say things like the bottom of the deck. So we want to know what the bottom of the deck is. Let's talk about that, and then we talk about the strongest energy, or if we flip over a card and it happens to be, let's say it's the World card. Now we're talking about the end of a journey and what did you learn? So it's fun because when we associate tarot with language, it actually becomes a whole lot easier to explain to people what's going on in the reading. And part of the journey that I've been on has been to develop tarot classes so that we can actually approach it from a language perspective. Verbs, adverbs, adjectives, nouns, all of it. So it fits together like pieces of a story. So when you read the cards in combination, they tell a story. It's
It's
someone,
incredible.
action, reaction, or someone, decision, and outcome.
The way you conceived of it as a language, teaching tarot in that particular way, I mean, we've talked about it as being a vehicle, as being a tool. I am actually I'm having like a mind blown emoji moment right now thinking about it as a language. Seriously, I am, Carrie, because anyone who knows me well knows I love learning languages. I speak a bunch of them. And the fact that I think what I'm struggling with is how did I never think of it this way before? Like it's so right there in front of you and so genius. That's exactly what it is.
It's exactly what it is. And I
Yeah,
think for me, I have so much respect for people who can speak other languages because I don't. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to learn tarot was to learn another language. I always looked at it as, well, the first time I'd had a reading, I thought, wow, this actually seems like a whole other language I don't understand. So I better go do my carry thing and figure out what the heck it all means. And I approached it from that perspective. I love to write. I very much enjoyed English as one of my favorite subjects. And anybody who knows how to speak English because they've had to learn how to speak English knows it's a complicated language, right? Everything means something else, and there's all kinds of rules and rules that are broken and all of that sort of stuff. It's sort of
million
the same in
exceptions.
tarot. When you look at tarot from a linguistic perspective, each of the cards has several meanings. And depending on who's reading and depending on what you're reading, you can determine this means this in this context, but this also means that in this context. shifts, small nuances make all the difference for
Or
what
even
you're
the
reading
interaction of the cards too.
and who you're reading for, and the interaction between the cards means something different. So like coaching, my goal is not to leave the limitations of this interpretation to you. So I will give you a bunch of different interpretations for what this could mean and let you decide what resonates best for you. I don't go there, you go there. It's my job to give you those meanings. It's my job to read it as if it could mean this, but it also could mean that, or that, or that. What do you decide that that resonates with in your life as you sitting there in front of me? And then we
Parallels,
go from
again,
there.
amazing.
Yeah, I think
Amazing, because I say this with my coaching clients. I always tell them, "You're in the driver's seat. I'm beside you in the passenger seat. Think of me as Siri. I'm going to clarify that, okay, so I've heard you say you want to get here. We can take route A, we turn left. We can take route B, we go straight. We can take route C, we go right. Which one would you like to explore? And then we can think about what kind of terrain you're going to have to go through. What are the consequences of making the decision to take A, B, or C? Oh, what's that? You've created route D? Okay, rerouting. you know? But you're driving. I always tell them, you're driving, you're turning the wheel, you press gas, you press brakes. I can't do any of that. I'm
or
just
if
sitting
you're
beside you.
still lost, what are you going to do? What can you do if you're still lost? If route A doesn't lead you anywhere or you don't like where route B goes, how about we explore where it will go if you don't do that? And oftentimes our tarot clients want us to say an absolute, and it's almost never an absolute, right? It's almost never this is going to happen, so this is going to happen after that. It's almost never that. Even if you read the cards that way, you can always say, if this doesn't work out, this is where you're meant to be also, right? If this isn't going to happen this way, think of it from the perspective of you're meant to determine that it's still okay. You're going to be fine, even if it doesn't work out that way, because that's the way it's meant to be. And that's a hard thing for people
It
to wrap
is.
their head around,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It's learning, and it requires an openness. And to me, these are just, very integratable human cultivation modalities, because it pushes us to develop to our potential, and it pushes us to you really just maximize, I think, our humanity, in terms of our agency and our to actually step into our own power and not be told what to do, but rather, this is my life, this is my decision, and in so many ways, I'm being guided to actually recognize it as such and take up that accountability and move forward with a sense of power, of personal power, because it is my decision, because I am the one who is, as I always say to my clients, whole, resourceful, and creative, and therefore, I can find that path forward.
I think there's so much free will that is missing from this enlightenment path and the spirituality path, and people get it conflated with the idea that it's all fate and destiny predetermined. This is not fate and destiny predetermined. Yes, I believe that there are no coincidences. I would be the first one to tell you that I don't think there are any coincidences. But in the middle of all that fate and destiny, you have free will. And your free will, your agency allows you to determine your path. And that's also predetermined, right? And so at certain points in time in your life, you're going to be faced with a whole bunch of questions and a whole bunch of decision making. And that is the way that it's meant to be. So what you decide from there determines your path. And that will also be predetermined. So I think uh, it's good to have guidance at certain points, but it's not good to make the guidance the decision, right?
Yes.
Don't give up that power to anyone. Don't give it up to a tarot reader. Don't give it up to a
Give it to a
coach.
coach.
It's still
Yep.
yours. You still own it.
Yeah, I think that's super powerful. And you know what? I think that really leads me to another path that I wanted to talk to you about today. And it really is about, our shared background in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And specifically that diversity and inclusion part. I'm thinking about how that how that integrates within the way that you practice tarot and the way that you even consider, which decks you use, how you work with the cards. How does it impact it?
It very much does. It's an intentional thing. And I think for myself, I've determined that reading the cards is all about connecting with the deck. So it's really important for me to have the right decks to use. And I do this, again, intentionally because I read a lot for other people. But I started out reading for myself. I've kept the decks that I've wanted to read for myself separate from the decks that I read for other people. And I did that on purpose. I want to have an opportunity to showcase to people that the deck can match their energy. And so I have a whole bunch of decks that have illustrations that are non-traditional. And those non-traditional decks really do mirror the experience of the individual. Let's say the individual client came to me and they are in their mid 20s to 30-ish. They're the interpretation of what I'm trying to move them through may be better determined by a modern image. And I would select a modern image deck for that individual. Let's say the individual is a gentleman in his 40s to 50s, and he's never had a reading before. I would choose the most diverse deck I can find. And part of the reason that I would do that is because the illustrations become a tool for opening up a world that may be very small. If this person's never had a reading before, why not show them all the possibilities of what the cards could mean? And sometimes the imagery does the job better than I ever could. But if you're getting bogged down in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, it's great to explain the archetypes. It's great to explain the meanings, but the imagery isn't always the best way to do it, right? So I have decks and I'm looking over here because I have a whole bunch of them on my desk. I have decks that are representative of the Black community. I have decks that are representative of the Indigenous community. I have multicultural decks that are specific to, and you and I have talked about the Tarot of the Divine, all of the legends that have been told throughout the world, collected
Yes,
together and pieced together as tarot messages, which is amazing.
it is. It's
So
beautiful. It's
it
incredible.
gives you a tool to really explore multicultural legends and myths and all of that sort of stuff and piece that together with the language of tarot, which is fun. I also have decks that have very minimal sketches, and I'll pull this one out. It's one of my favorites. It's by a gentleman named Thomas. And sorry, I'm going to get this here. Uh, do excuse me one second. Thomas of the Hermit's Mirror. Don't know if you can see
Ooh,
that.
yes.
So the Hermit's Mirror is his moniker, but he is a tarot artist, and he does cards that look a little like that. So that's the Wheel
Oh,
of
that's
Fortune
lovely.
right there.
Oh, yep,
And in
recognize that.
Rider-Waite-Smith, the Wheel of Fortune is generously drawn. It's got all kinds of color and
Lots
it's
of
got all
color.
kinds
Yeah.
of archetypes in the four corners. And what he's done is he's put this together so that you're less distracted with the image and more the lines. His whole determination is to get you to think about tarot from a linear perspective. Look at all of the lines that are coming together that make up the drawing itself. Um, Talk about how lines of life lead us to something in the bit of a labyrinth, and we can get twisted up in that message, but we can also be freed by being able to. And that's his whole guidance. So there's another one for you. This is the moon. So it's the same interpretation of the moon,
It
but it's drawn with
is.
one line, which is really cool.
It
So,
is. And I'm
I,
noticing with all of those, the focal point of the card becomes so much more. I don't know, it jumps, the impact, it imprints on the brain. When I looked at that Wheel of Fortune, when I looked at that moon, sometimes I get distracted in the Rider-Waite deck by the colors that are around the wheel, or I'm looking more at the wolves than at the moon that they're howling at. But these
right?
really center the
Yeah.
moon and the wheel.
Well, we pick up on the one thing we want to concentrate on in the picture, and that becomes our whole focal point when there a million different messages that are coming through. So, I have another deck here called the Ethereal Visions Tarot, which is a really, really beautiful deck. This is the back of the deck here, and this is I'm going to give you the King of Swords, the image of the King of Swords.
Ah, yes, I've seen these, and they
Oh,
have kind
these
of holographic,
the
like a
holographic
foil
piece is
finish. That's
just beautiful,
beautiful.
and they're a nice weight too. They're really heavy cards, which is great. But if you can see that here, this is a Navajo
Yes.
King of Swords. So this is a decision maker, which is actually a pretty nice allegory for the King of Swords. The King of Swords
Yes.
is a wisdom keeper. This is the individual that will help you confirm that you are making good decisions, solid decisions. This is mastery over your thoughts, mastery over your wisdom without action. So knowing and being confident in all of your decisions is all about the energy of this King of Swords. When you see this, let's see if the camera will pick it up. When you see this card come up in your reading, it really confirms that you are on the right path in terms of the way that you're thinking about a
Yes.
situation.
Yes.
It can also be the guidance from someone who is learned, someone who is an expert at something, coming in and giving you affirmed bit of knowledge because they have mastery over that piece of knowledge themselves. So think about a judge, a surgeon, an engineer, somebody who is super qualified to be able to give you advice.
Those
Right?
are
So
beautiful decks. Thank you for
I
those
love the Emperor in
examples.
this deck too. Here he is. Let's go
Wow.
this way. Yeah. So the Emperor, very strong figure, and the artist has decided that the Emperor is a black man, which is wonderful because we
It
don't
is. I'm noticing
see.
a pattern of that. I have a number of decks that have a black man as the emperor,
Yeah.
and I'm here for it.
And why not? You're like,
I'm
why
here
not?
for
This
it.
is the decision that I like when I look at a deck and I think the Emperor should be black. Why shouldn't he be black? For a lot of reasons, he is a strong, sturdy character. But I'm struck by how much the Emperor as father energy is not utilized by the cards of with people of color. They should be. I mean, a father is the central figure around stability and legacy and all of those sorts of things, and yet
Yeah.
it's missing when we talk about tarot for people of color. And I think that it's great representation when you intentionally make the emperor someone of color.
Yes.
Similarly with the Empress, and I have another deck where the Empress is actually three black women together on the side of a mountain, and they represent mother, daughter, grandmother. And so
That's
the energy
beautiful.
of the Empress, for those people who don't know, is mother energy. It's nurturance.
Fertility.
It's you determining that you're at the beginning of a journey and you need to grow whatever it is that you're trying to put together. Your creativity sits inside of you, and along with the energy of pregnancy and maternity, it takes time to grow things. So this the determination from that deck that it's mother, daughter, and grandmother shows that it's possible for us to overcome generational wounds. It's important that we take the time and honor our mothers and honor our grandmothers and the advice that they give us as well. It's very special. I don't have that deck sitting in front of me, but I should have brought that one. The Empress was really good.
Well, these are incredible. Thank you for sharing those. And, as you're sharing those, these are tarot decks. And I think maybe not, our listeners, our viewers will know the difference between a tarot deck and an oracle deck.
I'm
So how do
so
those differ, Carrie? And how do
so
you use
glad.
those differently in the way that you work with your
Yeah,
clients?
so glad that you brought that up. And I brought a really special deck that I love. It's called the ETA Tarot, and these are a Toronto-based art collective that has gone out to the art community and enlisted the help of, I think it's 28 artists. I'm probably getting that number wrong, to individually craft an oracle card, one card. So each artist has put together the illustrations or the art behind that card and the meaning of the
Idea.
oracle behind that card. So I'm gonna share with you a couple here. This one is grounding. So you'll see that the image is very, very rich, but the message is very, very
I'm getting
one-sided.
very like Queen of Pentacles vibes off of that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And grounding, by way of definition, is us making sure that we're centered and foundation to be able to help us to make good decisions. So, an oracle deck will give you something in the image that you can relate to and a message on the card that has to do specifically with what grounding is, and then you can lead the decision to what grounding means for you or what you need to get out of the message of grounding. So the way that I work with oracle cards in my tarot readings is that I may have a clarification in the reading that calls for an oracle card to clarify. It's usually at the end. Sometimes I will do a clarification at the beginning of the reading, depending on the individual and what they want to know, what they want to find out. If I'm if I have a reading where the individual is really stuck and not feeling like they are in a position where they have agency over what's next, pulling an oracle card might help. I caution, though, that the entire reading is not based on the oracle deck. That's an oracle reading. That's a very, very different thing. And it's not meant, I don't think, for decision making. It's really meant for advice. So here's another one. You could see that the art is very rich in this picture.
Is. It almost gives me like anime vibes. It's
And
gorgeous,
and
and I love
yet
the vivid hues.
and yet the oracle is called rainbow. To me, this is a very sad card, not necessarily something we think about when we think about the definition of a rainbow, what a rainbow might mean. But to me, in this card, a rainbow happens after a storm.
Yes, that's
So
exactly what I was thinking of, yes.
this individual is clearly trying to depict that there was a storm, there is a storm still, and maybe this is more of a hopeful rainbow than it is an actual positive outcome that is manifest now. But it might hearken that a rainbow will come at some point in time, and all you need to do is hope that there will be that positive outcome. The last one here I'm going to show you is this one, Spirit. So the artist I read here had done a homeless girl as Spirit. And again, remember, this is a Toronto-based art collective. So I think this really speaks to me, just in terms of the human spirit and what it must mean for an individual to survive under awful circumstances. And we can't put ourselves in these types of positions
It's giving me
unless
s
unless
such
we have
5
a
of
really good
Pentacles.
understanding. Um, and so for me, looking at what it must mean to be someone who has a strong enough spirit to overcome hardship, that's what grabs me out of this card. So her calm and her peace is kind of a what am I looking for? It's like an opposing energy to her circumstance. So you put in this really awful position and you still have spirit. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
That's so beautiful, and again, it's jumping out at me the parallels with coaching. Oracle cards from the way, you just described them, Carrie, very much sounds like when I say to a client who is very much struggling and looking for maybe a bit of, if not advice, maybe some wisdom that I can offer, gleaned from my own personal experiences that may or may not reflect what they're going through at that moment. And that's when I'll, say, okay, I'm taking the proverbial coaching hat off for a second here so that I can share this with you. I'm going to put it back on in a moment. That's what I feel like oracle cards are when I'm pulling them during a reading. Like, okay, I'm going to maybe be a little bit more directive for a second. Maybe read out the definition from the book,
Right.
actually pick the book up and do that.
Yep.
And then, we can see how that resonates or not and move back into coach mode, back into tarot mode once again.
And I think too, it's tough to put oracle cards in sequence. So if you were, for myself, when I read tarot, it's always cards in combination as opposed to cards on their own. I'm very very likely to be a 3-card reader or 9-block reader. I may look at a spread as being the way that we talk about your next steps type of thing, and lead a person through their next steps. It's hard to do that with Oracle cards, but I find that Oracle cards along the way are super helpful. It's like a stepping stone along the way. We've gotten to this point, and maybe we're at this place in the decision making where it's this way or that way. An Oracle card in the middle of that can help to balance tough energies that you may be picking up on, or to guide us in a completely different direction we hadn't thought of yet.
Well said. Thank you, Carrie. Well, this has been completely awesome. I think I do hope that our viewers today, our listeners, have really gotten a good quench of their thirst because I think we had more than a sip today. We got a whole
Yeah,
jug poured with Carrie, and this has been absolutely awesome. If people want to reach out or learn more about your tarot classes or anything like that, is there a way that they can do that, Carrie?
there is. There is. So I am best reached with respect to tarot classes or private readings through either my Instagram or my Facebook. So it's all in the cards tarot, and I'll give you that information so you can
Yep,
pass it
we'll put
along
it.
to
I'll
your
have it up there on the screen.
your listeners for sure. I have classes available on so you can pick a calendar spot, and we can talk about pricing. We can talk about how the groups are distributed. I will do classes with no more than 10 people because it really gets tricky with any more than that. I also offer tarot events. So if again you check my Instagram and check my Facebook, you'll see that I was just recently asked to do a tarot event in a restaurant as a collaboration that we called A Fool Walks Into a Bar. And we addressed the major arcana to a soundtrack that's available on Spotify. And we talked about all of the major arcana cards. And in the middle of that, we had some draws. In the middle of that, we had some reflections, and we had some card pulls, and a meal and drinks courtesy of the Kafana restaurant, which is where we held the event, and that's in Belleville. It really married what the kafana is, which is a community, a Slavic term for community event. So community place, community event, and then we threw tarot on top of that, which was a ton of fun. So
Oh,
much
that
fun that
sounds
we're actually going
incredible.
to do it 2 more times this summer. We called it Tarot Tuesday. And we're going to do one in July, and we're going to do another one in August. So if you're in the Quinte region and you want to come out, we've got some dates. You can buy tickets in advance and come join us for some fun. It
That
won't be a
sounds
fool walks
phenomenal.
into a bar next time. I have to think of a new theme, probably address the minor arcana and call it something cool. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's gonna be just naming that is gonna be wonderful. It's gonna come to you in the shower, or I bet when you're out
Probably.
on a run.
Probably.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Carrie. I've learned a lot today. It's actually been, in a strange way, quite reaffirming to sit and listen to you educate us all and share your knowledge and your wisdom and your authentic light. I really want to thank you for that. It resonates so much with me. I'm sure it's resonating with so many people that are taking this in right now. And please just keep bringing into the world what you're doing, which is, to me, your whole self. You are very much role modeling.
Well, Gina, thank you. Thank you, and thank your listeners. Really, really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about marrying something that is tough to it's tough to do, right? It requires me to be somebody completely different. So thank you for an opportunity to do that. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, until our next episode, I hope that you continue to sip, squeeze, and savor with style. If you haven't already, consider subscribing because you'll get these uploads on a weekly basis. And who knows what topic we'll go to next. All I know is that it's going to be something that'll be tasty for you. So until next time, everyone, please be well. And thanks for being here today. Take care.